Welcome back. As part of our playlist on family annihilators, this is the story of the Lin family massacre. 5 members of a hard-working Chinese family slaughtered in their own home as they slept. Robert Xie is a mass murderer, a family annihilator with a difference. It was not his own wife and children that he slaughtered, but those of his wife's brother, Min, Min's wife, Lily, 2 of their children, and Lily's sister, Irene. His motive? Jealousy, greed, and a perverse sexual attraction to his 15-year-old niece. Min Ling and Yuan Li, also known as Lily, migrated to Australia from China as students. They met in Sydney, fell in love, and began to build a life together. The couple had 3 children, Brenda, Terry, and Henry. Min opened a news agency in North Epping, in the northern suburbs of Sydney. It became a successful, thriving business, turning over $1 million a year. Min had also purchased 2 other commercial properties on the same shopping strip. The family were well known around Epping as a friendly, hard-working family. They owned a 2-storey home nearby, where Lily's sister, Irene, lived with the family, helping with the children and working part-time at the news agency. In 2002, Min's sister Kathy and her husband Robert Xie also migrated to Australia. Robert was a former ear, nose and throat specialist. They settled in Melbourne, where Robert opened a restaurant, but his bid to bring 3 chefs into the country was denied, and the business eventually failed. They moved to Sydney to be closer to Kathy's family, and bought a property just 300 metres from Min and Lily. They were a close family, helping each other in any way they could. In mid-July 2009, the Lin's 15-year-old daughter, Brenda, flew to New Caledonia as part of a 1-week school excursion with her French class. On the evening of Friday, July 17th, the family had a get-together dinner with Kathy and Robert, as well as Min and Kathy's parents, who lived just 30 minutes away in the suburb of Merrylands. Min's mother tried to persuade 12-year-old Henry to have a sleepover at her house, but Henry insisted on staying at home. He had a badminton game scheduled for the next morning. By all accounts, it was a happy and harmonious evening. The following morning, July 18th, Min's sister Kathy and her husband Robert were up early. Robert was cleaning the garage when Kathy received a phone call. Min's news agency was not open. It was a Saturday, the busiest morning on the shopping strip. People were lined up outside, and a huge pile of newspapers was still bundled on the footpath. Immediately feeling something was wrong, Kathy and Robert went straight to Min and Lily's house. When they arrived, they found the front door unlocked. Robert and Kathy entered the house and called out, but no one responded. They slowly made their way up the stairs. Kathy opened her brother and sister-in-law's bedroom door, with Robert following close behind. Their eyes were met with blood, covering the bed and all over the walls. Kathy moved closer and saw a body on the bed, which she knew instantly was her sister-in-law, Lily. Robert pulled her from behind, trying to shield her from the horror, but Kathy ran out and made her way to the next room, the bedroom of Lily's sister, Irene. The door handle was bloody and the door was ajar. Inside, the scene was the same. Blood was spattered everywhere, and Irene lay dead on the bed. At the end of the first corridor, Kathy and Robert walked towards the shared bedroom of their two nephews, 12-year-old Henry and 9-year-old Terry. Inside, the walls were also covered in blood. The two young boys lay dead on the floor. They ran downstairs and called 000. The call was a mixture of panic and confusion. Kathy struggled to find words to explain what she had just witnessed. At first, Robert can be heard in the background, as he told Kathy he was going to leave the house to go and get her and Min's parents from Maryland. Kathy can be heard pleading with Robert in Cantonese not to leave her alone in the house, but despite her pleas, he left.
Please go ahead, Telstra.
Thank you. Also requiring ambulance 853717.
Thank you. Police emergency. This is Tim.
Hello.
Please go ahead, Telstra.
Thank you. Also requiring ambulance 853717.
Thank you. Police emergency. This is Tim.
Hello, I need an ambulance to 55A Boundary Road.
What suburb? What suburb?
Epping North.
Epping North.
North.
Just let me find it here. What corner street's closest?
Close Back Street.
Close to?
Epping North Oval Park.
So it's 55A Boundary Road, Epping North, and it's a house?
Yeah.
What's the problem?
Yeah, the house.
What's wrong?
Yeah. Pardon?
What's wrong? What's wrong?
I'm not sure someone else is. I think I'm not sure.
You need to tell me why you need an ambulance. What's wrong?
Yeah, I think someone died. I'm not sure.
Why do you think someone's dying?
I don't know.
You need to tell me something. You're asking for an ambulance, but why?
Yeah, I also need a place.
Yeah, why? What's wrong?
Because I think someone would die.
Yeah, you need to say why. What have you seen or heard that makes you think someone is going to die? What is wrong? Don't scream. Just answer my questions. What's wrong? Can I talk to someone else? Is there anyone else there?
No,
Who's in the background talking?
Leave me, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I've got police on the way, but you need to tell me what's wrong.
Yeah, I need it because I have someone to be killed.
Is someone bleeding? Is someone unconscious?
I think so they die.
Why?
I'm not sure, but maybe someone killed my brother's family. No.
Why do you think that? Put that other person on the phone for me.
Emergency police fire ambulance.
Please.
You want the police connecting police? What state and town is the emergency in?
Please.
Sorry?
New South Wales.
Yes, what town in New South Wales?
Epping.
Epping?
Yeah.
Epping, New South Wales, connecting police.
Thank you.
Police are ringing for you now.
Go ahead, Telstra.
251438.
Your police emergency. This is Tim.
Hello, how are you?
Please go ahead, Telstra.
251438.
Thank you. Police emergency. This is Tim.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, what's your address?
55A Boundary Road.
Epping North?
Epping North.
55A Boundary Road, Epping North. What's wrong?
I need someone to come quick.
Yeah, we are coming. You need to stop screaming and tell me what the problem is.
Yeah, I think my brother's family. Someone killed my brother's family.
Why do you think that?
Yeah, because I went to his house and I knocked the door and the door is just closed and I opened and up the stairs finding my brother. I couldn't find him. I'm not sure.
Where's your brother?
Someone. I can find my brother. They're lying. I think someone is dying.
Are they on the ground?
Pardon?
Are they on the ground?
No, they're the bedroom. They're all the bedroom.
Are they in the house? Is your brother in the house?
I'm not sure because I just have to take a look at it. The body. I just had to call you.
Have you found? We are driving there. Answer my questions, please. Have you found a body?
I'm at my brother's home.
Have you found a body?
Because I went to his home and upstairs to check it because his shop is open and he's the agent and someone has called me and asked. I just go to check and I found it just quick.
We are driving there. Don't say quick. Tell me what's wrong. Have you seen your brother?
I'm not sure because I just look. I saw.
We're already driving there. You don't need to worry. We're on the way. But can you see your brother?
I'm not sure.
No, it's yes or no. Can you see him?
No.
Is he in the house?
Pardon?
Is your brother in the house?
I'm not sure.
No, it's yes or no. Have you seen him in the house?
I didn't see him.
But why do you think he's dead? I'm a bit confused.
Because I saw my brother's sister-in-law, the body, and I saw the sister-in-law, sister's body, and I saw the two cousins, to my brother's son's body. So I thought, up there, I didn't see my brother.
Can you see their bodies?
Yeah, I saw. So quick.
We're coming. We're on the way. You don't need to worry. We're on the way.
Call the ambulance. I'm not sure they are dying or not.
No, ambulance are on the way as well.
Okay, thank you much.
Police are in the street now. They'll be there in 10 seconds. Are you outside the house?
Yeah.
Are you out the front?
Outside, yeah, front, the driveway.
Can you see the police yet? They're driving there right now. They'll have their lights on. It is number 55A, Boundary Road, isn't it? It's right back. Long driveway.
Yeah, long driveway, opposite Epping North Oval Park. Yeah, I saw it. I'm not sure it's police car. Yes, police car, I saw it.
You can see the police car now?
Yeah.
All right, are they coming down your driveway yet?
Yes.
They're coming down your driveway?
Yes.
All right, you talk to police then. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
When he reached the home of his in-laws, he told them that something terrible had happened, but would not tell them anything further. When police and paramedics arrived at the scene, they didn't know what they were walking into. Kathy's frantic emergency call indicated there was likely at least one body, and it wasn't known if the killer was alive or dead. They had no idea what had happened or what to expect. Kathy was standing at the front of the property, screaming in a frantic state. As they opened the door, they found a simple family home, cluttered with daily life. The downstairs study and living area was filled with books, papers and a walking machine. The family shoes lined up at the foot of the stairs. There was nothing out of the ordinary. But when police headed up to the second floor, there was nothing ordinary about the scene that confronted them there. 4 bodies, 2 of them children, beaten so badly that they were unrecognisable. Their fatal injuries were so horrific that police at first suspected a shotgun had been used. There was blood splatter from floor to ceiling. A phone charger close to the floor was covered in blood, as was the ceilings and light fixtures. The level of violence was extreme and personal. This was no regular break-in gone wrong. This was a family murdered beyond recognition, attacked at their most vulnerable, in the middle of the night. Thoughts soon turned to Min. Where was he? And was he responsible for the massacre of his own family? Police cordoned off the street, while detectives canvassed neighbours for any information. Robert, Kathy and her parents were taken to Hornsby Hospital to be treated for shock and receive counselling. It was there that they were formally told that Min's body had also been found, hidden under the blood-soaked doona of the bed. A few hours later, Brenda, who was still in New Caledonia with her class, jumped on the internet with some friends. They wanted to check Facebook to find out what everyone had been up to during the school holidays. Brenda thought it was strange that everyone was asking if she was okay, until finally someone told her the news that her family had been murdered. Brenda would later say that at first she didn't believe it and thought it was just some cruel joke. Eventually, the school principal, Susan Bridge, made contact with the teachers on the trip, and Brenda was put on the next available flight home. Kathy was at the airport with police officers when Brenda arrived. She was escorted into a special room and officially given the news. She fell into the arms of her crying Aunt Kathy. The media reported the possibility of the incident being a murder-suicide. Acting Superintendent Stephen Henkel spoke to a waiting press at the scene. He confirmed that none of the victims' injuries could have been self-inflicted, ruling out the possibility of a murder-suicide. Police determined that the murders had occurred between 2 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. The electricity had been cut off, and it was likely that a key had been used to gain access. There was no obvious signs of theft. A makeshift hammerlock was determined to be the murder weapon, but it wasn't located. As well as blunt force trauma, asphyxiation was a contributing cause of death in 4 out of the 5 victims. The likely scenario was that Min and Lily were killed first, possibly suffocated to subdue them and then beaten. The level of brutality inflicted on both Min and Lily showed that they had received the most violent attacks of all the victims. Lily's sister, Irene, was killed in the same manner. The killer then went to Henry and Terry's bedroom, where it is believed that at least one of the boys was already awake, woken up by what was happening in the neighbouring bedrooms. It was apparent from blood spatter patterns that there had been a furious struggle. The boys had fought with their killer. Blood was found smeared on all the bedroom door handles except for Brenda's. Her door and room had not been touched. The blood smears showed it was likely the murderer was wearing gloves, and bloody shoe impressions were found. They measured to be men's US size between 8 and 10.5. On August 8th, a public funeral was held for the family. 5 coffins covered in white flowers stood in a row in front of hundreds of mourners. The grief was palpable. A trust fund was set up to secure Brenda's future education. The community rallied around her. Police deliberated over whether Brenda had been spared intentionally or if she was still a target. They also had questions about Henry and Terry. Were they part of the original plan, or had they been killed out of necessity, perhaps because they woke and saw the killer? Without knowing for sure, they decided to keep a close watch over Brenda for her own protection. On May 28, 2008, only 2 months before the murders, Min Lin had witnessed an armed robbery. The robbery occurred at the local Epping RSL club, which was directly across the road from his news agency. But this was later ruled out as nothing more than a coincidence. Robert and Kathy became legal guardians of Brenda. They also took over the running of Min's news agency, which had now become a shrine to the Lin family. Strike Force Norbourne was established to investigate the Lin murders. The Strike Force was comprised of detectives from the State Crime Command Homicide Squad with assistance from the Eastwood Local Area Command. The pressure on investigators to find the killer or killers was immense. The case was one of the largest single homicides in New South Wales history, and it had shocked the entire country. The investigation identified several persons of interest, but one by one they were crossed off the list. Police believed the killer knew the layout of the house and knew where the electricity box was. They may have known where to find a spare key, or they already had one themselves. The bloody shoe impressions found at the scene indicated the killer acted alone, and Brenda's was the only bedroom not entered, indicating the killer knew she wasn't there. All eyes focused on number one suspect, Robert Xie. Xie's wife, Kathy, had given him an alibi, stating that he had been in bed with her all night. But once Xie was granted power of attorney over Brenda and her family's estate, it was difficult to not question his motives. Detectives then discovered that after the murders, Min and Kathy's parents needed emergency housing because they were evicted from their home, the home that had been purchased for them by Min Lin. So it belonged to the Lin family estate, which means they were evicted by Robert Xie, their own son-in-law. The strike force was faced with a serious dilemma. The top priority was the safety of Brenda, who was now in the care of their number one suspect. They began covert video surveillance inside Xie's house. It was the start of a 6-month electronic surveillance operation. Little pinhole cameras were set up throughout his home. On May 7th, 2010, investigators watched this video surveillance inside Robert and Kathy's home. The view is from above the kitchen on a far wall. You can see through the kitchen into a study area with a couple of desks and computers. Kathy is sitting at one desk while Robert stands over the other, his back to the camera. A cutting sound can be heard over and over. Robert is cutting something into little pieces and placing the pieces into a plastic bin containing liquid. Upon closer inspection of the video, detectives realise that Robert is cutting up a shoebox from his men's size 9.5 Asics trainers. Robert picks up the bin and walks towards the camera, then past it, and then the sound of a flushing toilet can be heard. Bloody shoe impressions at the crime scene were linked to one of 3 specific models of Asics trainers. One of those models was called a 6th elevation, which hadn't been produced since 2005. Police were alarmed to also witness what they described as uncomfortable touching of Brenda by her uncle. It was not what could be called molestation, but clearly there was unnecessary lingering. 4 days later, police began what became a 5-day search of Robert and Kathy's home. They knew that Robert had been up early cleaning his garage the morning the bodies were found. While combing his garage for any forensic evidence, crime scene investigators moved a chest of drawers. On the floor underneath was a stain, measuring 2 centimetres by 6 centimetres. It was photographed, swabbed and labelled. Stain 91, as it became known, was found to be a complex mixture of DNA. Capabilities in Australia to establish DNA from mixed samples weren't quite there yet, so the sample was sent to a specialty lab in Pittsburgh, USA. They kept Robert under surveillance while they waited for the results. Brenda's school principal, Susan Bridge, had become a firm fixture in Brenda's life. After having lunch with Brenda and her Uncle Robert one day, something didn't sit right with Susan. She noticed that Robert was overly firm with Brenda, and it appeared as though he was trying to force her into saying things. The interaction wasn't normal, but Susan was unsure what to do. She finally talked Brenda into speaking with a lawyer, and she also spoke to the police. Susan wanted someone who could help Brenda understand relationships. Police finally received the results from the US lab on the testing of stain 91 from Robert's garage. It was an extremely complex process because it was a mixed sample. Stain 91 was found to contain the DNA of at least 4 of the 5 murder victims, with Terry Lynn's DNA matching a 1 in quadrillion chance of coming from any other person. They were also able to match stain 91 to a blood spot on a mattress from the murder scene. On May 5, 2011, nearly 2 years after her family was murdered, Brenda Lynn was called to the principal's office at school. Detectives from the strike force informed Brenda that her Uncle Robert had just been arrested for the murder of her parents, her aunt and her 2 brothers. At the same time, another strike force detective phoned Kathy Lynn at the news agency to inform her that her husband had been arrested. Robert chose not to appear in the Parramatta local court to hear the charges, nor did he make an application for bail. He did make numerous bail applications after this, but they were all refused. While preparing their case, detectives were contacted by an inmate from Sydney's Long Bay Jail, who said she had spoken to him about the murders. In exchange for a reduction of his sentence, the inmate, who became known as Witness A, agreed to record his conversations with Xie. Between July 2011 and February 2013, some of the taped conversations revealed Robert admitting that he purchased a hammer at a $2 store that he knew had no surveillance. He said he hid the hammer after the murders and could still access it if required. She said he had wanted to plant the hammer in an innocent man's house, but never got around to it. He said he easily controlled his 5 victims because he had martial arts training, then demonstrated a pressure point on the neck to Witness A. He said he had sedated his wife Kathy so he could sneak out of the house without her knowing. In an effort to find the murder weapon, Witness A told Robert Xie that he had a friend named Harry who was a funeral director. He could arrange for Harry to steal someone's DNA from a funeral home and plant it on the murder weapon. Xie said he would wait until the committal trial before deciding. On August 20th, 2012, 3 years after the murders, the committal trial began. Kathy Lynn was called as a witness for the prosecution, but her evidence over the 2 days she was on the stand showed that she was convinced her husband was innocent. The covert surveillance audio from Xie's house was produced, which also showed Robert telling Kathy and another relative what to say. After a lengthy committal hearing, Xie was committed to stand trial for the murders of Min, Lily, Irene, Henry and Terry. Xie's lawyer again applied for bail, but the application was refused. The trial date was set for September 2013. That date was later vacated and the trial was delayed until 2014. Back in prison, Xie told Witness A to make the plan with the undertaker happen. What he didn't know was that Harry was in fact Agent Harris, an undercover cop. On April 26, 2013, during his first visit, Harris didn't talk of the murders, but started with innocent daily topics. The key was to get to know each other. At a second meeting, Harris mentioned the search for corpses, and Xie said quietly, "Go." On May 24, 2013, during Harris's last visit, Xie mentioned the weapon but didn't reveal its location. What Harris didn't expect is that Xie then admitted to the killing, saying, "I did it." Harris pretended not to hear, and Xie repeated again, I did it. Xie's trial began on May 8, 2014. He pleads not guilty. The jury is told he allegedly made confessions to a fellow prison inmate. Brenda Lynn takes the stand and admits that her uncle had been sexually assaulting her. Molestation had started prior to the murders and escalated after she moved in with him. With this new evidence, the trial was aborted on June 10, 2014. A second trial began on August 5, 2014, but was again aborted after the trial judge, Justice Peter Johnson, fell ill. On February 4, 2015, Xie's third trial began. It ran for 10 months and was the longest in New South Wales history for a single accused. The jury began deliberations on November 12th, but after 19 days told the court they could not reach a verdict. A fourth trial would have to be held. Justice Fullerton acknowledged that Xie had already spent over 5 years in custody and bail was granted. On June 29, 2016, 7 years after the murders, the fourth trial began. In his opening statement, prosecutor Mark Tedeschi, QC, told the jury that Robert Xie was driven by bitterness and loss of faith within his family. He believed his in-laws favoured Min and Lily over him. He was also driven by a clear sexual interest in Brenda. The DNA evidence from Stain 91 was introduced. The jury were presented with a large number of recordings between Xie, Witness A and Agent Harris. Almost 6 months later, in anticipation of the jury retiring to consider its verdict, Robert Xie's bail was revoked and he was taken back into custody. On the 22nd of December 2016, the trial and deliberations went on hold over Christmas. On January 12, 2017, the jury had reached a verdict. A majority of 11 jurors found Robert Xie guilty of all 5 counts of murder. Justice Elizabeth Fullerton sentenced Xie to life imprisonment on each count, meaning life for each of the 5 murders. Justice Fullerton also acknowledged the strength and dignity which Brenda had displayed during such a profound time of grief. Min Lin and Kathy's parents were both relieved and devastated by the verdict. The evidence of the murders and acknowledgement of the sexual abuse over the course of the 4 trials strained the relationship between Brenda and her auntie Kathy beyond repair. Brenda later stated, "I finished my HSC, was accepted into uni, got my first part-time job and learned to drive. But I have achieved all of these things without my family beside me. These inherently happy moments are bittersweet. They are also a painful reminder of the family I have lost and will never see again." Kathy Lynn continues to visit her husband at least once a week in prison. Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe for more murder, mystery and mayhem. Until next time.